Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, and that is Caleb.
Hello.
And as you can tell, this is going to be a little different video than what we normally do. Normally we do like the breakdown on like Monday or Tuesday, and then we do the preview video for the next game on, Wednesday, Thursday. But this week we got a bye week. Nebraska's got a bye week, and we're coming off a little disappointing loss to Minnesota. And so that's why today we're doing kind of like a breakdown of the Minnesota game. And you can kind of think of it like a state of the union, a state of the state, a state of the team
Fireside
address. A little fireside chat. It's going to be a little bit more low-key today, and we're just going to talk about Nebraska football. How you doing, Caleb?
I've been better.
Oh, yeah.
I've
Is that a
been better.
tear I see that running down your cheek right now?
Yeah, no, that's the alcohol.
Whoa.
It's been better,
Wow.
Josh.
It must have been really better. Wow. Yeah. I mean, holy moly. So, as many of you probably knew or noticed or realized, Nebraska had a rough weekend. And it wasn't the best effort from Nebraska as a squad. It wasn't the best effort from any aspect of Nebraska football. It really, really hurt. I mean, as you guys probably watched, Caleb and I predicted a pretty close game overall, and we both had Nebraska coming out on top because we thought there was a pretty good chance that Nebraska could take advantage of Minnesota's vulnerable turnover problem and maybe get some sacks, get some pressure on Tanner Morgan. But we didn't even have an opportunity to do that as they barely threw the ball during the game because they ran the ball down our throats the whole time, and it was horribly painful.
We knew our linebackers were bad. Josh and I have screamed this to the mountaintops this year. We were terrified of our linebacking core, and
we assumed it was only a matter of time.
And there was plenty of time. There was a lot of frustrating things. Just a lot of really frustrating things. When we would stack the box, they do the play action. And again, we knew that they were a play action team. They knew that the run would set up the pass. We knew all this stuff coming in. I mean, Minnesota has not done anything different than what they've done against other teams. And we got absolutely smacked as a defense. And the frustrating thing was a close game. First half, we were down 14-0. Offense had some chances. Weren't able to convert.
I mean, at the end of the first quarter, we were down 7-0. So, I mean, the game was reasonably close over half the game.
Again, this team has had a lot of penalties. Special teams had a lot of penalties, and it was more of the same, more of this undisciplined, frustrating thing where we'd get a good drive going and then just shoot ourselves right in the foot every single time.
Yeah.
And, the Vedral Martinez thing, everybody's like, oh, see, like, Martinez isn't the problem. It's just offensive line. And obviously that's a lot to it, and Josh and I have a lot to talk about when it comes to offensive line. But, But I really think the Vedral Martinez thing was still really up in the air. I thought Vedral did a pretty good job passing again. We didn't turn the ball over once.
Well, that was the storyline of the game. I mean, both teams were struggling with turnovers going into this one. Again, we thought that we would take advantage of Minnesota's turnover problem, and we assumed that going on the road, a theme for Nebraska has been turning the ball over, and we thought we'd for sure see at least a handful of turnovers in this game. And we thought there was a chance of upward of 5 or 6 combined turnovers in the game, and there were none. I mean, and for a game that had pretty bad weather, it was really, really surprising. Yeah. I mean, it just shows that, both teams were trying to keep the ball on the ground as much as they could and establish that run game, and one team was just a lot better at it than the other.
Minnesota had not had an amazing defensive line by any means, and they were getting lots of pressure. We thought our offensive line had a chance to, be okay this week. Thought our defensive line had a chance to be okay this week, really do some things. They weren't statistically very high in either of these categories, and Josh and I figured we'd see a really motivated team. This was a 5-0, Minnesota team that we'd have a chance to embarrass them on their own floor. They'd faced absolute cupcakes. They'd almost lost to really bad teams. Like, we can move the ball against these guys. We were not able to do that. Super frustrating.
It just sucks because at the beginning of the game, there was opportunities for Nebraska to make something happen. I mean, our first 3 drives ended on Minnesota's side of the field inside Minnesota's 40-yard line. We went forward on 4th down, didn't get it, had to punt twice inside their 40. And we were 0 for 4 on 4th down in the game. It was just a struggle in the most clutch moments.
15 of our 25 plays in the first half were on their side of the field.
Crazy.
And we couldn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate where, like, maybe you play the game differently if you're able to kick the ball more effectively, try to get points early, but obviously that's not an option for Nebraska right now. And just a lot went wrong. Obviously, the offensive line played a horrible game. I mean, it looked just as bad as it did against Ohio State, which should not make sense against a team like Minnesota, who has nowhere near the talent that Ohio State does, but it looked just as bad. Defensively, I mean, PJ Fleck said it in his postgame, and this was what we talked about in our preview. They knew if they were able to get the ball to the outside and force Nebraska's linebacking core to run horizontally and try to make lateral plays on the field, that they were going to have a good chance to win. And it worked to a T. They ran a ton of slant blocking schemes, power blocking to the outside, and they found holes, and their backs played well. I mean, of course they played a good game, but Nebraska's linebacking core failed at every most important opportunity or most important or crucial moment, and that's where the game was decided, and Nebraska couldn't win a battle up front.
You guys have heard it so much this week. I'm sure you've read plenty of articles like Josh and I have. Yeah. I mean, that was the giant thing. Man, our offense and defensive line, they were just both fronts. We were getting out, physically just outmatched. Scott Frost said, I never want to coach a team that's that unphysical of a team or whatever after the post game, blah, blah, blah. Same thing we hear Scott Frost say every single week. Coach speak, coach speak, coach speak. No X's and O's. Let's get back to the fundamentals. I can't believe no journalist is like, what does that mean? What's the follow-up question to that? That just always drives me insane when I hear a press conference. Like, press the guy a little bit. I want some answers, please.
I wish we could get a little bit more from Scotty, man. Oh, my goodness. But, yeah, pressure, why this game, we know there's opportunity there. And we know as a big program, we, by definition, have more talent than them. I mean, if you go look at the recruiting numbers, you go look at
good stuff.
The actual recruiting numbers of who's starting on this field, the base talent, it all points and favors towards Nebraska. The X factor for Minnesota is the experience that these guys have. I mean, defensively, they were starting 4 fifth-year players, 6 4-year players. Offensively, we're starting no 5-year players and no 4-year players. We're starting 6 3-year players and 4 second-year players plus a freshman. Those matchups did not work in our favor whatsoever. Defensively, we have a little bit more veteran leadership on the defensive side, at least, where we're starting like 6 4-year players, 4 3-year players, 2 2-year players. We're kind of, JoJo as like an X Factor 12th man, because he plays so much. And again, Minnesota on their side, they're starting a 5th-year player offensively, 3 4th-year players, 4 3rd-year players, and 3 2nd-year players. So a little bit more even of a matchup on that side of the ball. What's the base talent for these guys? How does that match up? And defensively, we average a .874 recruiting rating, which this is on 24/7 Sports, which is like a high tier 3-star. Minnesota averages a .843, which is like a low tier 3-star. Offensively, we average a .886, which is like a high tier 3-star, nearly a 4-star average. And offensively for Minnesota, they average a .867. So again, like a middle tier 3-star, maybe slightly upper tier 3-star. So we have the recruiting advantage on both sides of the ball in this game and as a program, but obviously we're not able to capitalize whatsoever and execute to any extent to have a chance in this game. And it was just so frustrating. But yeah, I mean, the Minnesota game is just like a small part of the big picture for what's happening in Nebraska right now. It's like now we're going to kind of transition to the talk of the state of Nebraska. We're going to talk about recruiting, we're going to talk about coaching, talk about Mike Riley a little bit, talk about the players, and where Nebraska could be headed in the future, and what we have to look forward to in the season. Like, can we still rebound the season? Can we have a turnaround like we did at the end of last season? Can we make a little bit of a run here? That's what we're going to talk about here, and that's what we're trying to answer.
This has always been Josh and I's biggest gripe with Mike Riley, with Bo Pelini towards the end, to right now. It's like we have more talent than almost every other team on the Big Ten West side. It's not close either.
I mean, based off recruiting numbers, we do, yeah. And it's been like that for a long time now.
So when it comes to initial talent coming to Nebraska, we have a clear advantage. We average like almost 4 times more 4-stars than Iowa.
In the past 4 years, again, this is skewed because Nebraska lost a lot of these guys through the coaching transition. But since 2015, Nebraska's averaging 7.4 4-stars per year and averaging a recruiting class rank on Rivals of a 22.2 average, while Wisconsin's averaging a 34.8, Iowa's averaging a 44.2, and Minnesota's averaging a 48.6. And same goes with the 4-stars. Wisconsin's averaging 3.8 4-stars per year. Iowa's averaging 1.4 4-stars per year, and Minnesota's averaging 1.4 4-stars per year. Obviously, the Iowa thing, AJ Espinoza was a 5-star, so that kind of skews that a little bit. You got to maybe add another 4-star in there, but at the end of the day, there's a significant difference, almost 6 4-stars per year difference between Iowa and Minnesota and Nebraska when it comes to recruiting, and we're struggling in a game like this. That's why it's so frustrating. Again, the coaching change affects that. To be fair, Scott Frost has brought in 20 4-star recruits in these last 2 years. So a lot of the 4-stars that we currently have on the team are really young. The numbers still do hold up in that sense, though.
Like, from that point, you can be like, well, then why aren't we doing well now? Josh alluded to it earlier. We lost almost a whole recruiting class of 4-stars when Mike Riley left. All these coaching changes and stuff, it really hurts the team. So many philosophies being thrown at them. A lot of people want to know, how much is this to blame on the coaching staff? How much is it on the players and talent that we have? I think a lot of it comes down to Mike Riley was a real problem in this team. And I've seen articles on saying you can't blame Mike Riley anymore. But let's look at this. There was 9 defensive starters that were on Mike Riley's team. 9 of them.
9 of them are Mike Riley's players.
And we saw when Scott Frost again came in that the players weren't getting bigger, faster, stronger under Mike Riley. That just was not happening.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Like, if your players aren't getting better at football, aren't understanding it more, and they're not working their tails off, then like your team's not going to improve.
Think about how weight training works in Division I football, or especially in the Big Ten. So let's just assume a Mike Riley player is significantly underperforming in like the physical growth category compared to other players around the Big Ten. So if you're losing a significant amount of ground each year that you're in the program compared to guys who are in Minnesota, a senior for Minnesota is going to be way farther advanced than a senior for Mike Riley's program, So under Mike Riley, a freshman who came in lost 3 years of significant growth versus a guy who's been at Wisconsin, Iowa, and that makes a big difference if you compound that for those 3 years. When Scott Frost came in, he literally came in and said, we literally heard it from the coaches, like, man, this team was physically not anywhere close to a place they needed to be.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change overnight. I know we don't want to make too many excuses for this team because at the end of the day, the counter argument is that Scott Frost was able to take a UCF team from 0-12 to 12-0 in 2 years. You can't expect that at every program a guy goes to, but it is frustrating to lose to a team like Minnesota when the program of Nebraska should be able to beat Minnesota pretty regularly in a time like this,
To talk about what Josh said about UCF, the one thing that I will say about UCF is they had a coach, George O'Leary, for years there, who actually had some really good seasons for UCF. And so it's not the same as a Nebraska program where we have turned over now 2 coaches, which is never good. In any case, Bo Pelini, again, it was a very toxic situation at the end there, which really hurt the program. And then Mike Riley coming in, trying to do what he can, but again, trying to instill really not Nebraska things. What we saw from Coach Callahan, that same thing where you're trying to reinvent the wheel when Nebraska football, again, already works. We're already in this ecosystem of working. So
installing a new culture for literally no reason.
Yeah, exactly. We were Nebraska football, and so now there's still all these problems from all these years in advance. Callahan had a top 5 recruiting class.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That year when Sue was a senior, he was from the best recruiting class Nebraska has had since the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, again, recruiting is a ginormous thing. It's this, you can't overlook it, and we're losing players. And then the great thing is when you have a great coach, they're putting them in this well-oiled process of getting them bigger, faster, stronger, understanding the process. Yeah. And we're not throwing these sacrificial new lambs out there on the field anymore. These are juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors that understand every part of the offense, right? I think Scott Frost said his senior year, like he would be flipping through and Tom Osborne would be asking his plays, what do you do here? And he said he could literally do it all in his sleep. because he had been in this program for so long, understanding everything that you need to understand. And so good recruits are part of it, but you also have to process them into college athletes, because you can be one of the best high school players, but we see Mo Washington keeps getting hurt. He's fantastic, but again, he hasn't been in the system either because of all the off the field issues, so he hasn't been able to progress as much as he wants. Running back and wide receiver are the easiest spots to just plug in guys to be really good. Stanley Morgan, you just plugged him in freshman year. He was really good at what he does.
Even like DeMornay Pearsonell, same thing.
Amir Abdullah was plugged in into special teams and sometimes running freshman year because that's easy, and those are easy things to understand. Offensive lineman, again, this is the first year in Nebraska's history we have a freshman starting center.
It's crazy, man.
Center is the quarterback of the offensive line. It's the one, this is your job, this is here. He is literally the glue that keeps everything together. A freshman in that position, which should just never be the case.
And not only is he a freshman, but we don't even have a senior on the offensive line to like help lead the group, you know?
No, a junior in Farniok who, you know,
he started for like a little bit of he barely
kind of saw the
this.
field. And again, and not only is our center a freshman that's supposed to be the glue, he's never played offensive line before.
Oh, he's a tight end.
He was a 4-star tight end, not a 4-star center.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not knocking on him. We both think he can be pretty good. He's athletic, and obviously the snapping thing is an issue. But again, like, he should not be on the field in the first place on the transition.
So when it comes to our offensive line, like, woes. I mean, this is why people just don't have the perspective, I think, and this helped me put it into perspective. Like, why is our offensive line so bad this year? Obviously, we lost some key pieces. We lost some seniors on the offensive line from last year. We lost 3 guys who had a lot of playing time in their careers, and you fill them in with juniors, sophomores, and a freshman. You know, so there's obviously going to be some type of decline, but it's been a serious decline. So Football Outsiders, they track offensive performance, specifically offensive line performance. The 2018 Nebraska O-line
last year
statted out as 22nd ranked in rush line yards. This is rush yards attributed to offensive line play, and then 24th in pass line yards. So again, pass yards attributed to offensive line play. They were ranked 55th in stuff rate, which isn't a great, obviously, ranking, but it's at least competent. And stuff rate is the rate at which you are stuffed a line in a run play. And then this year, in comparison, insane, so bad. We're 112th in rush line yards, 106th in pass line yards, and 105th in stuff rate.
So bad.
What?
And the thing is,
so bad.
The difference is we had, 3 guys who were fringe NFL players. Gerald Foster with like the Bucks, and Farmer got some workouts. When you have guys who have been in a program again, and Gerald Foster's from Nebraska, like loves Nebraska, he cares and works hard and been a long thing. And not saying that the guys on the offensive line don't. It's just offensive line is not easy, and you have to play together and build a relationship. It's the most team sport within a team sport that there is offensive line. And you have to play together, and when they don't understand, and clearly we see in the plays that Farniok and those guys don't understand where they're supposed to be. They don't the reason we had to simplify the playbook after the Northern Illinois game, it wasn't because of Adrian Martinez. It wasn't because of the wide receivers, the running backs. It was because of the offensive line. We can't run the multiple sets that Scott Frost wants because of our offensive line. And does all the blame just go on the players? I don't know. Does some of it go on Greg Austin? But at the same time, we look at last year, and it was a decent offensive line. Yeah. And this year, with just no depth, and when you've built nothing to this point, to the point where you're so unconfident in the guys behind that you're starting a tight end turned to center, there's just some serious depth problems, some serious recruiting problems, there's some serious just pipeline problems, right? Nebraska, we called it the pipeline because we had a mix of Nebraska guys and really good recruits playing for years, so that most of those guys they weren't on the line that long. It wasn't that many years of action for them. It was battle testing, years of practice and weights and lifting, understanding the playbook, so that by the time that they were old enough, they were finally ready to be there, and they were all hungry to get there. so that you could be one of those guys. With Bo Pelini, we had people that Soon-Hoon Choi or whatnot, like they would get to play, but not until they were senior or fifth-year senior would they get to play, and they were good players. It's a pipeline of it takes a lot of practice and hard work to be an offensive lineman at Nebraska, and that's just not how it's been recently because we haven't had that depth.
It's not going to be easy to turn the ship around this year. With the problems that we currently have, it feels kind of like personnel problems, and there's not a lot of depth on this team right now to try new things or be experimental with who's already playing. Because I think at this point we would have already tried that, with certain offensive linemen, the linebacking core in general.
middle linebacker.
All of it, yeah, inside line, like literally.
Well, besides JoJo, I mean, I still actually absolutely do not understand. Just put him at linebacker. Just put him anywhere. Just get that man on the field on defense. He's one of our most dynamic players, and he is not seeing 80-90% of the defensive snaps. Why? I mean, he's fantastic. And again, like Lamar Jackson, that bench was good for him last year, and he turned into now going to be an NFL draft pick. And so it's not like there's
a high first round draft pick too.
Yeah. It's not like there's not talent at Nebraska with these older guys. And I know that they're working hard. Our defensive game plan, again, we knew what Minnesota was going to do, and we couldn't stop them. There's a lot to blame there. Our special teams still has penalties and still is bad. Our linebacking core, 2 years now, doesn't look good. That's a fact. Now, the offensive line, on the other hand, that one's a long problem. But there are short-term problems that I think are really concerning for Nebraska fans and that we really need to talk about and address more. Again, offensive line, last year they looked better than it did under Mike Riley. So I'll cut slack there. And that they need time and that there's depth problems.
Again, you have to put into perspective. Last year we were 0-6. Our first win didn't come until week 7.
But we shouldn't have been 0-6. We were a better team than an 0-6 team.
Yes,
so
I agree.
So on that same time, like we shouldn't have been 4-8. Like find a way to beat Troy. Like that's a serious tick. And on other games, like Northwestern, don't blow that game. Like we handed Northwestern a champ to the Big Ten championship when we were up 14 with like 2 minutes left. So again, that's coaching. But
this year,
right
we're
those are coaching errors.
Some of it's on the players. Mike Riley's teams were soft. It was the case. That was a true problem, and they couldn't win the big games. They couldn't come in clutch. They never did. Some of it might still linger a little bit inside of some of these guys when it comes.
Sure,
when
but
it
at the same time, players reflect the coach, and we've seen conservative play calls this year too.
Yeah,
the same way where it hasn't been good.
It's hard to be aggressive with how bad our offensive line is, though. That's the thing.
I 100% agree on the offensive side, and I think defense we've done some okay things. But again, like to let Minnesota push us around defensively was painful to watch.
Oh yeah, because it just shouldn't happen. Minnesota had offensive line problems before this game too.
We should have torn.
They shifted guys up all over the offensive line because of injuries. And they still dominated us. So that definitely is telling.
The second our linebackers got touched by an offensive lineman, they weren't getting to the quarterback. I'm not going to say that the players didn't play hard. I don't think that's fair. They wanted to win. I understand that. And I think more of it is like Minnesota kept doing the same things. Nebraska was trying different things and couldn't figure it out. One big frustration that fans have had is we don't look good at making adjustments on figuring stuff out in the second half. If we're leading in the first half, it's almost scary because our team isn't making a second half adjustments, and then we're getting burned, letting teams back into it and losing. And
yeah, I mean the third
we've seen
quarter
in Colorado against Northwestern. Like that's really frustrating, and I think those are really fair arguments that the fans have.
In the third quarter, we've been outscored 75-41 so far, and 37-7 in the last 3 games. So
that's coaching.
That's rough. That's definitely rough. When you take a step back and you look at this from a perspective, like we weren't a good team last year. Scott Frost was handed a very talentless roster, a non-physical roster, a non-tough roster, a kind of soft roster, and we struggled at the beginning of the year. We turned things on near the end of the year.
And Morgan.
Right. I mean, there's going to be some outliers, of course, and some good players. There has to be. But at the end of the day, like we're in a way better spot right now than we were last season. And we still have a chance to go 7, 8, wins this year, if we can pull one off against like an Iowa or Wisconsin, lame as it is, like 7 wins is still like a positive outcome for the season from where we were last year, even though it doesn't really feel like it from where we could have been and the expectations going into this season and the potential that we thought the offense had as a whole. Obviously, 7 wins doesn't feel good at all. But if we can get to 7 wins, play well in a bowl game, go into next year 8-5, I think we can be in pretty good shape. And you look at the roster, and the majority of our best players are underclassmen or juniors. I think there's a lot to be optimistic for about next season and the following year as well, and hopefully into the future as well. And I think there's a lot to look forward to. I mean, you look at Adrian Martinez, sophomore, Maurice Washington, sophomore, Wandale Robinson, true freshman, Dedrick Mills, junior, and then obviously the offensive line. No seniors on the offensive line. You got Jaime Jr., Hickson, sophomore, Juergens, redshirt freshman, Wilson Jr., Farniok Jr., and there's going to be a lot of guys that are coming back next year, or guys who have been redshirting this year, 4-star talents that could really, really contribute next year. Like Christian Gaylord will be back at right tackle. Bryce Benhart's a 4-star freshman left tackle, and he's going to get a redshirt this year, so he'll be ready to go next year backing up Farniok, and that might be a competition. Same with Gaylord on the right side with Jaime, so that could be a competition as well. And then the 2020 freshman, Turner Cochran's coming in, so the offensive line alone could be a lot better next year. And the same thing happened at UCF where Frost, his first year, the offensive line was young. They only lost 1 senior. And then the second year, they had a fantastic offensive line. Kind of the reverse this time, where the first year he had a pretty veteran offensive line. Come in, you lose some guys. So then the third year is going to be the year where things really turn around for the offensive line and become a really, really good core. It's 100% a possibility. And I'm pretty confident about our offense, especially defensively, though. There's still some question marks. We still have a lot of good players to build around moving towards the future for sure.
Linebacker has been such a problem at Nebraska since Levante
for
David.
A while now. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Will Compton was pretty decent, but like it's been few and far between. Teams can be successful in the 3-4. I mean, you see Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's has had JJ Watt and TJ Watt and stars, on their team and on the defensive side, and they've had good defensive coaching. And it's going to take that again for Nebraska. This is Big Ten football. This is, good teams. It is going to take some time and really good coaching effort. You can get really good talent, but you also got to develop and work it, and that takes time for sure. But at the same time, the product we've seen on the field, do we feel like they're developing and our players are getting better? And, we can hear this and that about practice, but it's about what happens on the field. At the game. Like that's what happens at the end of the day. It matters there. It's the win-loss column. The team really needs to respond. And I remember last year thinking about this. Remember how the accountability on the team changed? It was like, are you going to class? Are you doing the little stuff right?
Yeah. And that helped turn the team around. And
it turned the whole team around and their attitude because being really good at something isn't just being really good at football and nothing else. Or being good at whatever you do in life and nothing else. It is.
Yeah, generally talented people are pretty good at a lot of things.
They're good at a lot of things, and they're working hard in a lot of areas because you can't just turn that switch on and off in everything, And the team really adopted that, and it was a really cool thing to watch. The energy was back up, and they really hit home in that last half of the season, really energizing and igniting and believing in one another. And I don't know what happened to that this year. I don't see that as a team, like that same accountability, that fire to win, to do good, to be successful that they caught on the second half. It's the same frustrating, almost entitlement thing that I've seen. Well, I'm a Nebraska football player. We should just be good. Or we worked really hard this offseason. We should just really be good. Like it takes that same amount of hard work that you did in the offseason and in practice to put it on the field and do it. And it's no different. And I don't know if it's a mental hurdle. I don't know if it's a coaching hurdle. I don't know if it's a player hurdle. I don't know if it's all three. But there is a fundamental problem. And it's definitely been here at Nebraska for a while. So it's just frustrating and painful to see Nebraska fans get their hopes up. We have a chance to still do things, and we got over Ohio State as a fan base, as a state. Even the close Northwestern loss, we kind of got over that as a fan base, even though they were a terrible team. It feels like we didn't get over it on the football field.
I still want to focus on some of the positives, though. Long term, our team's in good shape. I really do believe in Scott Frost and the program he's building. Like I said, we have a lot of young talent offensively and defensively. We got Cam Taylor-Britt, sophomore, Dicaprio Bootle's junior, JoJo Doman's a junior, Caleb Tanner's a sophomore, Markel Dismuke's a junior, and we got lots of young guys coming in, like Nick Henrik, inside linebacker. He's a 4-star. He looked real nice. I think he's going to be a solid player. Nola Gates, Jakeem Grant, Henry Gray. Like, there's some good young guys coming in. Who knows who else we're going to pull in with this recruiting class in the future. I really do believe in Scott Frost and what he's doing as a program. There's some things that we need to figure out, though, and hopefully we can see that improvement in the next few weeks. Yeah, we have a bye week to kind of figure things out. A winnable game against Indiana and a winnable game against a struggling Purdue team on the road before we get tested again by a fantastic Wisconsin team at home. So
they're
in the short term,
wow,
there's some hurdles. I think there's still a lot of optimism to be had for Nebraska football.
Yeah, and it's a mentality thing. Again, I think this team can be really good. I trust Scott Frost. I'm not saying that. I definitely, again, have some questions, but I think as Nebraska fans who support the fan base, who go to the games, who love this team, it feels like the football team represents the state. It's fine to have questions. I think it's only fair. Don't go like ripping into every kid on Twitter or whatnot. Like,
yeah, for real.
That's not great. We don't need to be
ripping into Darian Daniels all game.
Yeah, on Twitter.
Really
like I don't think that's the thing.
No.
But I do think that there just needs to be some sort of a mentality change that we had in the second half of last season. That, again, I'm just so lost on why it doesn't feel like it's there anymore when I thought that was the culture. I just don't see that same love and joy that, I saw at the second half of last year. That was so much fun to watch. Well, guys, let us know what you have to think. How are you feeling about Husker football? Can we turn it around this season? Can our offensive line get better? Can they learn? Can we do enough so that we have a chance to upset Wisconsin or Iowa? Again, you have to play every game, and I'm still hopeful as a Nebraska fan that we can turn it around because I don't know about you, but I really hate losing to Iowa, and I really hate losing to Wisconsin. And I'm guessing the players hate it way more than I do, and the coaches hate it way more than I do. And they really want a chance to prove themselves and win. And again, just like Josh said, there's still so many opportunities. Until all the games have run out, there's opportunities to prove yourself as a good team, as good players. And we have this bye week to mentally reset. Hopefully the team can do that. The fan base can do it. It's not easy when you take one of those losses, especially to a Gopher team that's won 10 games once in 100 years in a season. 2003 is it. We've done it we do it 25% of the time. They do it 1% of the time in a 100-year span. That's a gut punch, and we know we shouldn't lose to them. And that's always why, again, it's hard. And as always, guys, I'm Caleb. That's Josh. This has been Backseat Sports, and we'll see you next video.
See ya.